Hi everyone, welcome to John's Briefs, back again with Tim Forsey, defense attorney extraordinaire and judge pro tem.
No longer, actually. I stopped doing it about a year ago.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah. So former judge pro tem.
I couldn't afford it anymore. I learned a lot, loved doing it, but yeah. No.
They don't pay you very well to do
that?
Well,
they don't pay nearly as well. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, that's a lot of money. When you're running a law office, it's not enough money to keep the law office open. So,
yeah, that's the problem.
So you got kids in college, it suddenly becomes an incentive to, But anyway.
So, Tim, here we are looking at the active killer situation in Nashville. We also have had a couple of other circumstances where that came up. In particular, in Nashville, they anchor shotted the killer a couple of times, and I want to talk to the attorney about it.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
So I'll put the link in the description. You can go watch the whole analysis. I really think from the perspective of the response, this is textbook.
These officers... It made me, weirdly, I mean, horrible tragedy. 6 people died, right? Terrible. So before we get all, woohoo, what a victory, 6 people died. All right, so that's like saying that the Battle of the Bulge was a victory. Well, 75,000 men died. I don't know if that's much of a victory. So you have to ask yourself, let's keep it in that perspective. It's a horrible tragedy. People died. Innocent people were murdered by a psychotic murderer. So that said,
the response was tremendous.
The police response was amazing. It made me proud to be a guy who's trained law enforcement, trained with law enforcement. It was like they had a shining moment. And as you guys pointed out, as you and Mike pointed out, compare and contrast this with what happened in Uvalde, which I still cannot grasp. And it was like, okay, this is how it's supposed to work. I couldn't remember if it was you or Mike, but one of you said this should be a training video.
Yeah, it should.
If it's not, it better be, because it was just, valiant police officers performing flawlessly.
With speed.
The guy that had the AR-15, you could tell he was just, you could tell he was a shooter. You could tell from the way the rifle was kitted out, from the way he held the rifle, the way he maneuvered the rifle, he maintained trigger discipline. Everything about this should be a training video, yeah.
A+. So the officer with the rifle comes in, pop, 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 puts 4 shots on the perp, who, again, we always follow at Active Self-Protection what we call the some asshole rule. And the some asshole rule means we never name an active killer.
Nope.
In fact, we don't give them any dignity of humanity.
And don't call them a mass shooter or an active shooter. I was at a 3-gun match at Rio Salado Sportsman's Club here in Mesa, Arizona a couple of weeks ago, actually last weekend. And there were about 140 of us shooting a 3-gun match, and we had a blast. People were polite. I had people loaning people ammunition, giving each other hugs. How you been? How's your wife and kids? Blah, 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 blah. And they were all shooters. It was a mass shooting, and it was a wonderful experience. We all had great camaraderie and had a great time. We all learned how to shoot better. That's a mass shoot. Let's call these what they are. They're mass murderers. They're mass murderers committed by mass murderers, not mass shooters, with firearms. Called a mass murder with a gun. That's what this was. Yeah. And we need to take the word shoot back away from the media who've demonized it. They don't. We had the same week as the shooting in Nashville, we had a guy plow into an immigrant shelter in El Paso with a car and also kill 6 people, and yet nobody called that a mass driving. Yeah.
So also with the some asshole rule, it's a contentious issue because this killer was transgender. So there's going to be some discussion here. I am particularly referring, when I refer, I'm going to use they, them pronouns. And why? As part of the some asshole rule, I deny them what they want, and I deny them their desires, but also I'm not going to bait or anything like that. This is just part of the some asshole rule. Right. I don't give them the time of day.
So, I don't care if it's a man, woman, or a transsexual. To me, they're just a murderer.
So here's the thing. Officer with the rifle comes in, bang, 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 puts the shooter down. Officer with the pistol comes in just behind and puts 4 more on him. And at some level, you go, wait a minute, that's kind of an anchor shot. Mm-hmm. Do you see any problems there legally?
Not in this case, no. Now, I use a video in one of my classes. It's a clip from the movie Collateral with Tom Cruise. It's a Michael Mann movie. Michael Mann, one of the few directors that actually tries hard to get the firearm stuff right. And there's a scene in there where Tom Cruise is confronted by a guy who's just stolen his briefcase, and he's approaching Tom Cruise.
Classic scene.
And Tom Cruise does a retention drill, diverts the firearm, and does a close quarter retention drill, hits the guy twice in the chest. Then he turns to his colleague, who's now drawing his weapon, and does a failure drill, 2 to the body, 1 to the head. Then he walks over, retrieves his briefcase, and then very casually, as he's walking away, puts an anchor shot into the first bad guy's head. And I always tell my class, right up until that, the first 5 shots, completely legally justifiable. The last shot, that's an anchor shot. That's a coup de grace. take this for your effort as you go about your day, kind of a thing. Never going to be defensible. Now, that's much, much different than this. Here we have a psychotic monster murdering school kids.
Right.
I have no idea if there's body armor involved. I have no idea what I'm up against. Is it appropriate to make certain that that monster is down and there's a stake through that monster's heart before I approach that monster? Absolutely. I mean, again, you're the tactics expert more than me.
Yeah,
but
I really think in an active killer,
I just don't see any problem at all. I mean, now again, you don't go over and spit on them and start kicking their corpse. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying you have every right in that situation. There's 6 dead little bodies laying below you.
Yeah.
Do you have every right to make damn sure that person's never going to get up again? Yeah.
Well, and I think, again, in the active killer scenario is probably one of the few here, CONUS, here in the U.S., that you're going to not have real problems with it.
Right.
Wait a minute, what's going on? Well, certainly, I don't know how many there are. And I have a killer here, bang, bang, okay, they went down. But I don't know if there are other people around here that I
divert my attention away from that person that's down, and I address this guy, and then this person's blood pressure neutralizes, and they sit up and shoot me. The Jason effect, we call it. Yeah.
So
can't accept that.
Given that very unique circumstances of an active killer, I don't see a problem with it. And I do think, okay, so we had a case, not we, but there's a case out of Oklahoma a number of years ago. A very different case of a pharmacist who got in a gunfight with a couple of guys, and one guy drops inside his pharmacy, he chases the other guy out of the pharmacy, shoots at him on the way down the street, separate issue, comes back, guy's laying there moaning on the ground, gets a second gun because he has run out of his first one, so it's a New York reload, comes over and shoots the guy in the head, and is convicted of murder for the last shot. On the other hand, there was one not long ago here out of Houston of
Taqueria.
Yeah, the
I was going to
Taqueria
ask you to
shooting.
bring that up. Yeah.
That he puts 8 shots in the guy in 2 4-shot bursts, bang, 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 and then grabs the guy's gun and comes and puts one more in him. Now, the grand jury, no building.
I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Grand jury, no. Well,
wow.
So at any rate,
it's good to be in Texas.
I can't imagine. So I knew they were going to. They had that guy did contact the authorities through his attorney. I know that it was going to a grand jury. I ain't never seen no bill, and it's not been back in the news. So
I guess it could be on hiatus. I mean, they could have decided to delay it or something. But yeah, if that got no true bill, I'd be surprised. But then again, the Texas thing, the bastard needed killing comes from Texas.
And so I go, well, at some level, that guy was dead. So you get him for mutilating.
Are you desecrating a corpse?
You're desecrating a corpse or something like that.
When we talk about anchor shots, it always harkens back to me and I'm significantly older than our host here. The famous Bernard Goetz subway shooting in New York back in 1980, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you remember. You remember that? You ever looked at that or studied it? So.
I mean, did you get a deferment from World War II? Is that what happened?
When I fought in the Crusades, just let me tell you.
Went to boot camp with Moses.
Wow. I was just starting college. I wasn't that old. But the point being is that the media over the years has, of course, completely villainized Bernard Goetz. And don't get me wrong, I'm not hiring him as a babysitter. But the point is that he went to trial for 1 count of homicide and I believe 3 or 4 counts of aggravated assault. And he was acquitted of all charges except for violation of the Sullivan Law, which was having a handgun in New York City. He was acquitted of everything else. The joke's always, Bernie Goetz, the crazy subway killer. Those are all justifiable shots. Now, when he was being interrogated, my understanding was he was interrogated for like 27 straight hours without a break, except to use the restroom and for an occasional glass of water. And he was like falling asleep, and they wouldn't let him go. They wouldn't let him go. They wouldn't let him go. And at one point, he said that, well, I went back. I'd fired 4 shots. I had a 5-shot J-frame Smith & Wesson. So I went back to the one guy and I said, "You look like you need another." And I fired one into his head. And it was a very stupid, inappropriate, off-color joke that a sleep-deprived, exhausted guy made under unfair interrogation.
We'd never do that.
They seized on that, and then they said, well, that's what he did. He shot 4 shots at these guys, and then went back and shot the 5th guy in the head. That didn't happen. He didn't do it that way. He was completely exonerated of all the charges of homicide. So the world's most famous anchor shot, at least back then, was not an anchor shot. So again, appearance is everything sometimes.
It comes back to using your firearm as a shield, not a sword.
Exactly.
So
did you need to?
In an active killer environment, man, I have a highly terrible circumstance happening all around me, and I have to protect us from this killer. And so to use an anchor shot there, by anchor shot we mean a shot that we know absolutely after they're on the ground is going to kill.
Yep.
Okay? Usually to the head at that point, because you turn the electrical system off and it's
again, not to get grisly, I couldn't see whether the shots were to the head. They had the head blurred out, so I couldn't tell. I assume they probably were. I don't know.
I don't know.
That would make sense from a strategic standpoint. So.
And again, As a general rule, as a self-defender, if you come and you're going, you so-and-so, you should not, and you shoot him again, now you're using your gun as a sword.
Yep.
And you could be very well prosecuted for that. If instead, again, the articulation of, listen, people are dying right here. I got to get this guy completely out of the fight, because if I don't, people are going to die, and I got to go check for more people and then start doing medical on the people. In an active killer, you're probably going to be okay. You know, they're going to give you the keys to the city, not
and they should.
charges,
and they should. Next time you hear somebody bad-mouthing the cops, see if you can get them to watch this video.
Yeah.
Because, man.
And listen, if again, if you're going to punish somebody with it, if you're like, yeah, John just gave me permission to go get away with an anchor shot, well, then you're a fool, and please don't carry a gun.
You're a murderer.
But if instead we go, wait a minute, I have to in this moment in order to protect these people around me, then you're probably going to be okay.
That's right.
So, Tim, thanks so much for the discussion.
As always, buddy. Yeah, and thanks to those officers.